The Pakled High Council stared down at their captive, fascination and contempt warring in their alien eyes. Humanity's future hung in the balance, dependent on the answers of one lone explorer to the Council's pointed questions. Derek Hicks, stranded on this uncharted world after his ship malfunctioned, found himself standing before the Pakled leadership, the first human to make contact with their advanced civilization. The Council peppered him with inquiries about human biology, culture, technology, and psychology. Their interest was far from benign. Long-range observations had marked humanity as a potential threat, with its rapid expansion and technological growth. The arrogant Pakled doubted mere primitives could ever rival them. But Derek saw the writing on the wall. Earth could face a devastating preemptive strike if the Council deemed humans too dangerous. The stakes couldn't be higher. War or peace between their worlds hinged on Derek's ability to change the Pakled's misconceptions. He had to demonstrate that despite humanity's flaws, they sought knowledge, not conquest. In the face of the Council's dismissive questioning, Derek struggled to paint humanity in a positive light. How could he convey their ingenuity, adaptability, and desire for peaceful exploration, while accounting for the species' bloody history? Humanity's propensity for violence, fractious divisions, and environmental destruction threatened to undo his efforts, portraying them as volatile and self-destructive. Commander Rigel, assigned to interrogate their guest, was already convinced humans were a barbaric, warlike species that needed to be subjugated or destroyed. His stark worldview left little room for nuance. Derek realized he was fighting an uphill battle against Rigel's ironclad preconceptions. With every question the Council posed, the threat of war grew. Derek racked his brain for some way to show the Pakled that humans ultimately sought peace, despite the Council's dire projections of an inevitable conflict based on humanity's advancement. Rigel's cold eyes bored into Derek as the next question rang out. The explorer took a deep breath, knowing his response could determine the fate of two civilizations. What could he reveal about humanity to make the Pakled see them as more than the sum of their worst impulses, a people with potential for great good, if given the chance? Derek steeled himself as Rigel entered the interrogation chamber, the commander's eyes hard and calculating. The questioning began without preamble. "Tell me, human, what weapons does your species possess? What are your plans for expansion?" Rigel demanded, leaning forward. Derek met Rigel's gaze. "Our weapons are primarily defensive. We have no desire for conquest, only peaceful coexistence." He launched into a careful explanation of humanity's history, highlighting moments when they had risen above their destructive impulses. "In the face of global catastrophe, we united as one species rather than fight amongst ourselves," Derek shared. "We've learned from our past." Rigel listened, his expression inscrutable. Derek pressed on, determined to build a bridge. "We've made great strides in fields that could benefit your people. Advances in medicine, agriculture, clean energy." Derek outlined each area, emphasizing the potential for collaboration. A flicker of interest crossed Rigel's face, quickly suppressed. The Council will determine the value of such knowledge. The next day, Derek found himself before the Pakled High Council, a dizzying array of simulations playing out around them. Humanity's ships swarmed Pakled worlds, the aggressor in every scenario. "This is your future," one counselor declared. "Your species cannot be trusted." Derek shook his head vehemently. "These simulations are flawed. They assume the worst of human nature, ignoring our capacity for reason and cooperation. Let me prove we can be allies." Silence fell as Rigel stepped forward, surprising the Council. "I propose sending the human back to his world with a delegation of our own, to open diplomatic channels and assess the situation directly." The Council erupted into debate, voices clashing. "Trust must be earned," one member insisted. "If the human will submit to a thorough mind probe, we may consider this unorthodox proposal." Derek's heart raced. He knew the probe would be invasive, but for the sake of both their peoples, he had to take the leap. "I accept." Pain lanced through Derek as the probe tore into his mind, rifling through memories. The council witnessed moments of human cruelty and violence, but also acts of unparalleled compassion and selflessness. Scenes of humans standing together in the face of adversity, their differences forgotten. And the probe revealed another truth. Humanity was on the cusp of faster-than-light travel, decades ahead of Pac-led estimates. The council reeled at the revelation. Some saw only a growing threat, but Derek argued passionately. Our rapid advancement proves we could be valuable allies against the dangers out there. We're more alike than you realize. Derek's earnest words swayed many on the council, but as hope kindled, a sudden explosion rocked the chamber. Pac-led extremists, opposed to any alliance with humans, had launched a brazen attack. Chaos erupted as the fanatics stormed in, weapons firing. Derek moved to shield the council, but a shot meant for him struck Rigel instead. The commander crumpled, blood pooling beneath him. Without hesitation, Derek knelt beside his former adversary, applying pressure to the wound. Even as the remaining extremists were subdued, Derek refused to leave Rigel's side, working frantically to stabilize him until help arrived. The council looked on in astonishment. The human they had held captive and subjected to their suspicions was now fighting to save one of their own. In that moment, the last doubts fell away. Humanity's potential for good shone through like a beacon. As Rigel was rushed to medical, the council reconvened, shaken but resolute. The extremists among our own people pose a greater danger than the humans ever could, one member voiced. An alliance could steer both our civilizations toward a brighter future. The decision was made. Derek would return to Earth with a Pac-led delegation, the first step in building a lasting peace. There would be challenges ahead, fears and prejudices to overcome. But with Derek to guide them, both humans and Pac-led dared to hope that cooperation might triumph over conflict. Derek looked to the stars, the weight of two worlds resting on his shoulders. The path forward was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure. The future was still unwritten, and together, they would shape it into something extraordinary. Derek Hicks stood on the bridge of the Pac-led diplomatic vessel, his heart racing as Earth grew larger in the viewscreen. Beside him, Commander Rigel leaned heavily on a crutch, his face tight with pain, but eyes bright with anticipation. "We're approaching Earth orbit," the Pac-led helmsman announced. Derek nodded, turning to Rigel. "Are you sure you're up for this? The doctor said you should rest." Rigel waved off his concern. "I started this mission. I'll see it through." As they descended through the atmosphere, Derek pointed out landmarks to the Pac-led crew. The ship touched down on a landing pad outside the United Earth Government complex in Geneva. A group of officials in crisp uniforms waited to greet them. Derek and Rigel disembarked first, followed by the Pac-led delegation. A tall, silver-haired man stepped forward, extending his hand. "Welcome to Earth. I'm Admiral Marcus Caldwell." Derek shook the Admiral's hand firmly. "Derek Hicks, this is Commander Rigel." Caldwell turned to Rigel, inclining his head respectfully. "Commander, we're honored by your presence. I understand you were injured recently. I hope you're recovering well." Rigel straightened, meeting Caldwell's gaze. "Thank you, Admiral. I wouldn't miss this for anything." Over the next few days, Derek and Rigel accompanied the Pac-led delegation on a whirlwind tour of Earth. They visited sprawling megacities and remote villages, centuries-old cathedrals and gleaming mosques. The Pac-led marveled at the diversity of cultures coexisting on one world. But they also witnessed the darker side of humanity. In Rio de Janeiro, they passed shanty towns where impoverished families struggled to survive. Outside Beijing, they saw the lingering effects of industrial pollution on once pristine landscapes. During a private moment, Rigel turned to Derek, his expression troubled. "Your people have achieved so much, yet you seem intent on destroying yourselves. How can we trust you won't bring that destruction to the stars?" Derek sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We're not perfect, Rigel, but we're trying to be better." He tapped a few commands on his data pad. "Let me show you something." The next day, they visited a massive solar array in the Sahara, powering millions of homes with clean energy. They toured a vertical farm in Singapore, producing food for an entire city block. In orbit, they observed an international team constructing a space elevator. "This is how we're facing our challenges," Derek explained. "Together." Rigel nodded slowly, his skepticism fading. "Impressive, but I'd like to understand your people better. Not just your technology, but your minds." Derek arranged a series of meetings with Earth's leading thinkers. Rigel engaged in heated debates with philosophers, scientists, and spiritual leaders. The Pakled commander's preconceptions about human intellect were shattered as he grappled with complex ideas and novel perspectives. As the diplomatic mission progressed, tensions on the Pakled homeworld grew. A group of hardliners, led by Commander Rigel, viewed the Earth visit as a threat to Pakled superiority. Derek and Rigel were in the middle of a meeting with the United Earth Security Council when alarms blared throughout the building. Admiral Caldwell burst into the room, his face grim. "We're under attack," he announced. "Someone's hacked into our defense grid." Derek and Rigel exchanged a look of horror. "It has to be coming from within the Pakled delegation," Derek realized. They raced to the command center, where human and Pakled technicians worked frantically to repel the cyber assault. Derek and Rigel coordinated their efforts, combining Earth's cybersecurity protocols with Pakled countermeasures. After hours of tense work, they managed to trace the attack back to its source. Derek's blood ran cold as he saw the familiar Pakled ship identifier. "It's Razel," Rigel growled. "He's trying to sabotage everything we've worked for." Before they could act on this information, the main view screen flickered to life. Razel's face appeared, twisted with hate. "This farce ends now," he snarled. "Withdraw the delegation immediately, or Earth's leaders die." The camera panned to show Admiral Caldwell and other high-ranking officials bound and gagged. Derek's mind raced, searching for a solution that wouldn't plunge both their worlds into war. Beside him, Rigel stood frozen, torn between his duty to his people and the fragile alliance he'd helped forge. As Razel's ultimatum hung in the air, Derek knew the next few moments would determine the fate of human-Pakled relations, and possibly the future of both their species. Derek and Rigel huddled over a holographic display of the compound, their faces illuminated by its ghostly blue glow. Admiral Caldwell's top tactical team surrounded them, ready to spring into action. "We go in under the guise of negotiations," Derek said, pointing to a side entrance. "Rigel and I will take point. The rest of you stay hidden until we give the signal." They moved swiftly through the shadows, approaching the compound with practiced stealth. Derek's heart pounded as he and Rigel stepped into view, hands raised. "We're here to talk," Derek called out. The guards tensed, weapons trained on them. After a tense moment, they were ushered inside. As they navigated the corridors, Derek's keen eyes spotted telltale signs of explosive charges hidden throughout the facility. He exchanged a meaningful glance with Rigel. This was worse than they'd imagined. They found Razel in the central control room, a detonator clutched in his hand. "One wrong move," he snarled, "and I blow this place sky high. Then we'll see how your precious alliance fares." Derek raised his hand slowly. "Let's talk about this, Razel. Is war really the answer?" As Derek engaged Razel in debate, stalling for time, Rigel slipped away to lead the rescue team. Gunfire erupted in distant corridors as they fought to extract the hostages. "You speak of unity," Razel spat, "but humans will never truly accept us as equals." Derek countered each argument, drawing on everything he'd learned about Pakled culture. "Our differences make us stronger together," he insisted. "Think of what we could accomplish if we put aside our fear and distrust." The debate grew heated as explosions rocked the compound. Dust rained from the ceiling as the structure groaned ominously. Realizing time was running out, Derek changed tactics. "You call yourself a true Pakled? A leader?" he taunted. "Real leaders don't hide behind bombs and hostages. They face challenges head-on." Razel's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, momentarily forgetting the detonator in his hand. Derek seized his chance, tackling Razel and wrestling for control of the device. They grappled on the floor as the building shook around them. With a final desperate lunge, Derek's fingers closed around the detonator. He smashed it against the ground, praying he'd hit the right sequence to disarm it. A deafening rumble filled the air. Derek looked up to see the ceiling caving in. He tried to run, but debris rained down, pinning him in place. As darkness closed in, his last thought was of Rigel and the others. Had they made it out alive? Hours passed in suffocating blackness. Derek drifted in and out of consciousness, his body racked with pain. Then a faint sound. Voices. The scrape of metal on stone. "Here!" a familiar voice shouted. "I found him!" Light flooded in as Rigel's face appeared above him. "Hold on, my friend," the Pakled commander said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're getting you out of here." Hands grasped Derek, carefully extracting him from the rubble. As they carried him to safety, he saw the grim faces of human and Pakled rescuers working side by side. In the days that followed, as Derek recovered in a medical bay, news of the incident spread across both worlds. Rigel stood before a joint assembly, denouncing Razel's actions and praising the courage shown by humans and Pakled alike. "This crisis has shown us the true strength of our alliance," Rigel declared. "Together, we will root out those who would sow discord and destruction. Our future lies in unity, not division." Derek watched the broadcast from his hospital bed, a small smile on his battered face. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but for the first time, he truly believed humans and Pakled could forge a lasting peace. As he drifted off to sleep, Derek's mind turned to the vast, unexplored galaxy waiting beyond. What wonders and dangers might they discover out there? Whatever lay ahead, he knew that only by working together could their civilizations hope to face it. Derek Hicks stood before a cheering crowd, his face a mask of composure as he accepted yet another commendation. The thunderous applause washed over him, but inside he felt hollow. As the ceremony concluded, he retreated to his quarters, collapsing onto his bed. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by vivid flashes of memory. Derek jolted awake, drenched in sweat, the echo of Razel's snarl still ringing in his ears. He stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. The mirror reflected sunken eyes and a gaunt visage he barely recognized. Days blurred together. Derek went through the motions, attending meetings and diplomatic functions. But each handshake, each congratulatory pat on the back, felt like sandpaper on raw nerves. Even conversations with Rigel, once a source of comfort, now left him feeling isolated and misunderstood. "You should be proud, my friend," Rigel said one evening, his voice tinged with concern. "You've accomplished so much." Derek nodded mechanically, unable to voice the turmoil raging within. How could he explain the weight crushing his chest, the constant replay of lives lost under his command? Unable to bear it any longer, Derek boarded a shuttle bound for Epsilon 7, a remote mining colony on the edge of explored space. The harsh, rocky landscape matched his inner desolation. He rented a small prefab shelter, hoping distance would bring clarity. But isolation only amplified his demons. Derek spent sleepless nights pacing the cramped confines of his shelter, his mind a whirlpool of self-recrimination and doubt. The vast, empty horizon seemed to mock his attempts at finding peace. Weeks passed. Derek's comm unit chirped insistently, ignored messages piling up. He barely ate, barely slept. His beard grew unkempt, his eyes wild and unfocused. Then came a knock at his door. Admiral Caldwell stood there, flanked by Rigel. "It's time to come home, son," Caldwell said gently. Derek recoiled, shaking his head. I'm not fit for duty, for anything." Rigel stepped forward. "We have a solution, Derek, a way to help you heal." They explained the neural link procedure. Derek listened, skepticism warring with desperation. "It's untested," he protested weakly. "So is our alliance," Rigel countered, "yet here we stand." Finally, Derek nodded. What did he have left to lose? In a sterile Pakled medical bay, Derek lay on a biobed, electrodes dotting his scalp. Rigel reclined beside him, their eyes meeting briefly before the sedative took hold. Darkness enveloped Derek, then a kaleidoscope of memories. He relived his capture, felt the phantom pain of torture. Rajel's face loomed large, twisted with hate. Derek's heart raced, his body instinctively trying to flee. But this time, he wasn't alone. He felt Rigel's presence, steady and unwavering. Together, they faced each horror, each loss. Rigel absorbed the full brunt of Derek's anguish, his alien mind struggling to process the intensity of human emotion. Their consciousnesses merged, transcending physical form. In that moment, Derek felt truly understood for the first time since his ordeal began. The burden he'd carried for so long began to lift, shared between two souls united across the stars. When Derek opened his eyes, the world seemed brighter. He sat up slowly, feeling lighter than he had in months. Beside him, Rigel stirred, his eyes wide with newfound understanding. "I had no idea," Rigel whispered. "The depth of what you endured." Derek clasped his friend's hand. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. Days later, Derek stepped off a shuttle onto Earth soil. A small group waited to greet him: Admiral Caldwell, members of his crew, and a contingent of Pakled diplomats. As Derek embraced each in turn, he felt a sense of belonging he'd feared lost forever. The sun dipped low on the horizon as Derek and Rigel stood side by side, gazing at the stars beginning to peek through the twilight sky. Derek took a deep breath, savoring the moment. "Where do we go from here?" he asked softly. Rigel's eyes gleamed with purpose. "Wherever the stars take us, my friend, together."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.